People think apologizing all the time is a sign of politeness, humility, or respect, but psychology disagrees completely. In fact, some of the most anxious and deeply conditioned people on this planet are the ones who utter the word "I'm sorry" for the smallest things. A behavior that looks like kindness on the surface is actually an unconscious defense mechanism for survival. So, why can't they stop doing it? That answer will surprise you. We live in a culture that celebrates people who are easygoing and compliant. Don't take up too much space, don't disrupt the peace of others, and always maintain harmony. But here is what psychology has quietly uncovered. People who apologize too much aren't necessarily more polite than everyone else. They are trapped in a state of hypervigilance. They perceive their environment as inherently unsafe. And science is starting to explain exactly why. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden psychology of people who apologize too much. What drives this extreme behavior? What fear are these words trying to hide? And why have most of us been misreading it our entire lives? Conditioning from early childhood. Think about the first time you learned to apologize for something that wasn't even your fault. You probably weren't an adult. You were a child. Maybe a glass of water slid from your hand. The reaction you got was far worse than a simple accident. Maybe you grew up in a home where emotional moods of adults were unpredictable, like a time bomb. And you learned something by making yourself small and accepting that blame, you could prevent the explosion. The message you received from your parents, your environment, or your early experiences was this: if someone is upset, it must be your fault, or you are responsible for the peace of this house. That message didn't just fade away as you grew up, it got wired into your brain. Children who grow up in a volatile, controlling, or rejecting environment learn a vital lesson. Preemptive apology means safety. They learn to raise the shield of guilt before anyone can get angry or cast them out. When these children grow up, they spend their lives feeling like an inconvenience, that their very presence is a burden, and that they must constantly apologize just for existing. The nervous system and the fawn response. But behind this behavior lies a well-documented psychological truth. Excessive apologizing is not a behavioral flaw. It is a biological response to fear. In psychology, there is a term for this known as the fawn response: submitting and people-pleasing to deflect danger. It is the fourth defense mechanism of the nervous system, alongside fight, flight, and freeze. When the nervous system of an individual is highly sensitive or carries trauma, it perceives the world as a constant threat. Research showed that people with people-pleasing tendencies process ordinary social interactions as a potential minefield for rejection. They use an apology as an anxiety painkiller. For an average person, when someone bumps into them on the sidewalk, it's just a minor event and they move on. But for someone with this behavioral pattern, even when they are the victim of a stranger's clumsiness, they immediately say sorry. Why? Because their brain translated the event like this: a tension has been created. Extinguish it immediately before it escalates. These people apologize when they reply to a work email a few minutes later, when they want to ask a regular question to a shopkeeper, or even when the wind blows their umbrella. This isn't a performance or a character weakness. It's the nervous system trying to reduce the pressure of an intense inner anxiety. They pick up on the emotional frequency of potential anger or disapproval at a level most people simply don't feel. They scan the subtext of relationships as if they could be rejected or punished at any given moment. The heavy burden of over responsibility. There is a quietly exhausting emotional experience that these people know intimately: existential guilt. This feeling has nothing to do with an actual mistake. It's a phenomenon psychologists call emotional over-responsibility. This means the individual feels entirely accountable for the feeling, comfort, and satisfaction of every single person in the room. If the weather is cold, if the food is late, or if their friend is in a bad mood, they feel a physical tightness inside. A lump in the throat sends a clear signal. Something is wrong, and it's my job to fix it. Sitting across from someone who is frowning isn't an abstract situation for them. It's an emergency. They immediately absorb pieces of the other person's unrest. To cast away this negative energy, they threw out the word sorry like a magic spell to calm the room down. This process is deeply draining. They aren't just managing their own anxiety. They are carrying the heavy weight of keeping everyone else pleased. The tragedy is that these apologies don't come from guilt. They come from being paralyzed by the fear of losing connection. The price of rumination and eroded self-esteem. But this defense mechanism comes at a massive cost. For other people, a conversation ends and they move forward. But for someone who over-apologizes, the narrative is just beginning. They go home and spend hours playing back the conversation. Did that word upset them? Was my tone wrong? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. This is called relational rumination. In these individuals, the mind is constantly putting itself on trial. The misconception in society is that this behavior is a beautiful sign of peacemaking. But the darker truth is that this habit melts your self-esteem piece by piece. When you apologize for taking up space, for having an opinion, and for breathing, you are signaling to your subconscious mind, my right to be here is conditional upon me not inconveniencing anyone. These people are effectively negotiating with others for permission to survive. They lower their own value just to keep the balance of the relationship stable. It's a short-term strategy to avoid conflict. But in the long term, it leaves the individual feeling hollow and identityless, a release valve or an exhaustion trap. Many of the deepest and most compassionate people in the world are caught in this trap. They are incredible listeners, deeply empathetic, and the emotional safety of others is always their priority. They read the emotional subtext of people before any words are spoken. But these beautiful traits are being fed by a sensitive and wounded root. Excessive apologizing is a faulty pressure release system. It's like a pressure cooker with a broke valve that keeps whistling constantly. The whistling isn't a sign that the machine is broken. It's a sign that the internal pressure of anxiety has peaked, and the system is trying to restore safety through the word sorry. But until the person realizes that the issue is the sheer volume of stress and a lack of core safety, this cycle will never stop. The courage to take up space. Here is the part that gets almost no airtime in the cultural conversation about relationships: the right to take up space without feeling guilty. People who apologize too much need to learn that their presence in this world does not require a license or an apology. What if the strongest person in the room isn't the one who shrinks themselves to keep everyone else happy? What if real strength is being able to stand tall with all your flaws, your opposing opinions, and your differences, and never apologizing to anyone for simply being who you are? These individuals have been misread for years, labeled as weak, spineless, or overly submissive. But psychology tells us a different story. Behind this behavior is an exhausted nervous system that is just trying its best to stay safe. This trait isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something whose roots you must understand, so you can learn to practice the courage of existence instead. If this video changed the way you see people who apologize too much, subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. Are you someone who apologizes too much, or do you know someone who does?